This week, 7,000 athletes from 177 countries are converging on Los Angeles. They're here for the Special Olympics 2015 World Summer Games. But this is more than just one of the world's largest sporting events. The Special Olympics have become a global movement with a mission to create a better world by fostering the acceptance and inclusion of all people. I'm Mike Walter in Los Angeles. Let's take it full frame. For the first time in more than a decade, the Special Olympics World Games are being held here in the United States. In fact, right here in Los Angeles, California. Founded in 1968 by Eunice Kennedy Shriver, the Special Olympics is the world's largest sports and humanitarian event and serves people with intellectual disabilities from ages 8 to 80. The program provides year-round training, competition, and health and education programs to about 4.5 million athletes in over 170 countries. And here to tell us about the impact of the Special Olympics and why they're so special to her is legendary American figure skater Michelle Kwan. She's the most decorated figure skater in U.S. history. She's won an unprecedented 43 championships, 5 world titles, and 2 Olympic medals. A longtime supporter of Special Olympics, she also serves on the organization's International Board of Directors, and we welcome her to Full Frame. Thanks so much for joining us, Michelle.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
You just heard the introduction. I mean, you've got so much hardware. I mean, so many titles. Did you ever imagine that would be your legacy?
No. I look back at my skating career and think, wow, I competed for so many years, competing in world championships, 2 Olympic Games, countless national championships. And I think when I was competing, it was like counting my blessing and just, it was one competition after another, having the opportunity and also the honor to represent the United States. And if I could still do a triple lutz and a triple flip right now, I'd probably be still skating. But moving on to doing incredible things. I mean, skating opened up opportunities, and being involved with Special Olympics is something that's near and dear to my heart.
Well, we'll talk a little bit more about that, but I want to talk to you about, growing up. Was it the beauty of the sport? Was it the competition? What attracted you most?
I was very sporty when I was young. I don't know how to explain that. And very competitive. I have 2 older siblings, a brother and a sister, and I was attracted to, running, track and field, all sorts of sports. And actually my parents encouraged it because my sister and I were both enrolled in gymnastics, ballet. But when I saw figure skating and I saw the pretty costumes and the ability to go really fast, the athleticism, coupled with the beauty of the music and the choreography and the costumes, I think really got my attention.
Let me ask you to take us inside your head in a competition because I think your name could be Swan because it's so effortless and you glide and you soar. And I just think, oh, she's lost in the music. I mean, it's such a beautiful sport. And yet I know you have to be thinking, oh, that announcer's going to say, here comes the triple lutz. She better nail it. I mean, there's so much pressure. Tell me what's going on in your head as you're actually out there in the rink.
Are you sure you weren't in my brain? Because that's sometimes what you can almost hear the commentator. At the time it was Dick Button and Scott Hamilton and Paige Fleming. You can almost hear them commentating on your layback spin or going into a difficult triple combination. And at the time you have to be so focused. But there are times when you're focusing and you're going into, you're basically full speed ahead into a triple combination. And then you're like, oh, I wonder what I'm going to eat afterwards. You're like, focus. I think it's like that in life. You have to have that tunnel vision. You're like, keep focused, keep focused, keep focused. And in sport, that's definitely what my kind of thought process was like.
Okay, I'm going to ask you one more question, then we're off to Special Olympics. What about the unfairness of the sport? Because I've seen you perform and I'm like, there's no way she's not winning this thing. And you're just like, and we're more frustrated, I think, at home than you are. But you look up and the numbers are there, they hold up the numbers, and then somebody else comes out and you're flawless, they're flawless, and it's kind of subjective in the end, isn't it?
It's very subjective, and you never know, what they're judging on. I mean, and oftentimes you're thinking, oh, was it my makeup? Was it my costume? Did it not look as pretty as the other skater? But I mean, that is something that is out of your hands. So going into it, even when I was a young kid starting to skate, I realized all you have in your control is actually do your very best, and the rest is up to the judges. And so when you receive your scores, you're actually sitting in a kiss and cry. So they call it that because you're either going to kiss or you're going to cry.
Well, I saw an interview with you, and I thought you were so poignant in how you said it and so thoughtful. You talked about inward focus, outward focus, how when you're absorbed in this sport, I mean, it's all you think about. And then when you're leaving, that you had this outward focus, that you started to think about the Special Olympics, even though you got involved in the Special Olympics when you were still skating, I believe. Talk to me about that shift, inward to outward.
Well, in skating, I always felt, in a way, almost selfish because I had so many people helping me, like my parents that have been so supportive, sacrificed so much, and also early mornings at driving me at 5 o'clock in the morning to the ice rink. Coaches, choreographers, trainers, everybody, the United States Olympic Committee, United States Figure Skating Association, helping me get to where I wanted to be. And when I stepped away from figure skating about 8 or 9 years ago, I kind of want to reverse that dynamic and kind of be able to help others and make a difference and make a positive impact. And I have been involved with Special Olympics for a very long time throughout my skating career too. And it's an organization that I deeply care about. As I was talking to you earlier, Special Olympics is like my family. They're my sisters and brothers. And you do anything you can to help your brother or sister.
And perhaps your grandmother or grandfather too, because that's the interesting thing about 8 to 80. Talk to me about how inspiring it is to watch them perform, because they really get into it, don't they?
Yes. When you see Special Olympics competitions, unified sports, you see your athletes. It's about passion. It's about participation. Win or lose. I mean, that is what the spirit is all about. It's about participation, bringing about more inclusion and acceptance with people with intellectual disabilities.
And you're on the board now. That happened, I think, back in 2010. So talk to me about that experience, what that's been like, and where your travels have taken you as a member of the board.
Well, I've traveled to, let's see, the World Games in Shanghai, in Boise, in Greece, and I'm super excited for the World Games in Los Angeles. And it's just going to be a time where the world comes together for the biggest sporting event and humanitarian event in the world. And it's so exciting. Being on the board, I've been able to be behind the scenes and trying to make an impact, a greater impact. I traveled for many years as one of the ambassadors, but to me it's a real honor to be behind the scenes and being able to be creative and figuring out how we can help more millions of people's lives. Right now we have reached about 4.5 million people. But there are so many more millions of people with intellectual disabilities who still are waiting for that opportunity to be included, to be able to play and have friends and feel included in society.
Michelle, you talked about Eunice Kennedy Shriver, and it's really a tragic story about her sister, and yet she, back in that time, people with these kind of disabilities were kind of shunned aside or hidden away from society. And Eunice didn't want that. I mean, we've come a long way, but where do you see us now? And obviously, it's like a relay race. You keep handing off the baton. We haven't reached the finish line. Where are we as a society, and where do we need to be?
That's a very good question. Over 40 years ago, when Eunice Kennedy Shriver founded Special Olympics in their backyard, I think she refused to accept the fact that, it was shunned. People with ID was shunned. I just remember somebody saying this to me. It's Congresswoman Na from Korea. She said, I have a daughter that has intellectual disabilities. And she said, I want someday, in society that somebody doesn't walk, next to my daughter and have to do a double take because they're not used to seeing somebody with intellectual disabilities. I want them to feel included just like everybody else. It's not about having a disability. It's just being able to be included and part of society. People with intellectual disabilities don't want to have pity. They don't want your pity. They want to feel included in society. And that is what we're doing every day at Special Olympics, fighting for that.
You mentioned the word family. I was talking to one of the participants who talked about, as a young kid being bullied and teased, and he'd try and start a conversation, and people would look at him and basically run the other way.
Laugh.
And then he found Special Olympics and he found family. It really does so much for their self-esteem as well, these athletes.
Yep, it's absolutely right. I mean, when you talk to our athletes before they found Special Olympics, they were by themselves, lonely, and oftentimes, laughed at, and even bullied, like you said. And people are sometimes mean, using the R word, and that's why we started the R campaign, R word campaign, to stop people from using the R word, because it hurts people's feelings. And that is what we're trying to fight. We're trying to give everybody that opportunity to play, to feel included, and it creates, Special Olympics is a family, and it allows people to have a place where they can make friends, they can get involved, they can be involved in sports, and there's ways that you can volunteer. So it is something for everyone.
We know what the athletes get out of this, but clearly there has to be great takeaways for the volunteers as well. And for you, can you share a story or two about things that you've seen along the way that have touched your heart?
Well, to me, it really sums up what Special Olympics is all about, with this one story of two ambassadors of Special Olympics who have represented and really outspoken and does interviews and engages many people. And they were talking, and they were talking about like different sports that they're involved. One said, I do winter sports, I ski. First of all, that's impressive to be able to do a lot of sports. So they were just talking, and I just was eavesdropping a little bit, and they said, but I love bowling. And they both went, I love bowling. And I remember somebody chimed in and said, well, if you had to compete against one another, who would win? And they looked at each other and said, together, simultaneously, they said, we win. And it was, to me, that is the spirit. It is about participation. It's about friendship. It is about helping one another. And it is about fun. And that is what, to me, this organization is all about. It's being able to have people with intellectual disabilities come together to play, and to make friends, and to have this bond, this family that is what Special Olympics is really, to me, all about.
And I'd like to get kind of your rundown on how to have the energy that Michelle Kwan has, because it seems like you're going 100 miles an hour. I listed off everything that you're doing, and I just heard that you're also now involved in Hillary Clinton's campaign as well as outreach surrogate. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, I'm super excited and honored to be working for Hillary. I had the opportunity to serve as an envoy during when she was Secretary of State, and when I had the opportunity to jump on board, I said I would love to work with somebody that I respect and admire, and I hope to be the first female president of the United States.
And at some point, Michelle Kwan moves from skater to Secretary of State. I mean, where do you see your future? Because obviously, I know you're interested in international relations. Where do you see your future?
It's hard to say. I never anticipated. In figure skating, I always had set goals, like it's the next Olympics or next competition, and it was always kind of really. There wasn't much of a strategy. It was just like one step in front of the other. And I guess that's kind of how I approach my life now. I have, of course, great interest in international relations. Received a master's degree at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, worked at the State Department, and who knows what's next.
Well, the good news, Michelle, is the sports thing goes in like 4-year cycles. Politics the same, so you won't have to shift that way. But we want to thank you so much for talking to us. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Coming up next, we'll be joined by another superstar Olympian turned humanitarian who is a driving force behind this year's Special Olympics World Games.